So this is Question Box Sunday, and this is a Unitarian Universalist tradition. Thank you. Thank you to the deacons. So this tradition is one in a lot of Unitarian Universalist congregations where you, the congregants, ask questions and the minister tries to answer them. In the past, I've done it in a congregation where the tradition was that I did get the questions a little bit in advance. So this is new, to get them totally fresh and unseen. Always it is the case that the questions are much better than the answers. So I will try to read as many questions as I can and give my quick first response answer. So here we go. First category. And I'll try to take some from the different categories the deacons have kindly put them into. The first category is hope and fear. What is our moral responsibility to non-human inhabitants of our planet, including animals and plants? Well, we have the seventh principle, the affirming and promoting and care of the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. And of course, we humans are just a part of Earth, of everything that is. And other animals are also very important and amazing creatures in this universe. And so I have always believed that it's important to care for other animals as well as human animals. They're not so very different from us. So I believe that they deserve kind treatment, compassion. They deserve to have us think about their welfare and to lead the best, most natural lives they can live. As for plants, it's a great question. I haven't considered plants as having feelings in the same way without the central nervous system and brain, so it feels a little different, but plants are an important part of the interdependent web, so to care for ourselves, other humans, and other animals, we have to take care of the plants, if nothing else. A couple more from this category. What is your advice for maintaining hope in the face of individual and government inaction on climate change? Maintaining hope in the face of the inaction. I think, like a lot of people, I tend to go into denial and not think about it. It's so easy to do. It's not put in front of us as often as it should be, and so it can be easy to just forget about it, especially since when you do think about it, it does feel so hard and so hopeless. But I have hope in that, a few things. I do think that humans are more good than not. I do believe in our inherent worth and dignity. I know that we can come up with incredible things and solutions, and I'd like to think that we will wake up in time to save what we can, things that haven't already been put into motion in a way that they can't be saved. So I have hope in humans and humanity. And I also have hope in that life is very resilient, and so I'm not sure what things will be like on Earth in 100 years, 1,000 years. But something will be here, and I have hope that I hope that humans are part of what's still here, and I have hope that we will save ourselves. And I think that doing every little thing you can gives you a feeling of hope too, to act yourself in ways that are better for the planet. I think that doing something always feels hopeful. How do you balance finding joy in life while also maintaining intense striving to fight for justice for all? Reminds me, there's a quotation by E.B. White, who wrote Charlotte's Web and that book of grammar too, Strunk and White, I think. He said something like, I wake up torn between the desire to savor the world or to save the world. And that's what makes planning the day so difficult. You have to take breaks, you have to have joy. It's no good to just be fighting for justice and doing good deeds and never enjoying your own life. You'll wear yourself out, and in the end, you won't do yourself or anyone any good. So I think it's just, you've got to do it. And one of the things that gives me hope in the current situation we're in this country, and also brings me some joy, is I highly recommend late night TV. If you can't stay up late, I recommend, on demand or something, or YouTube, because I find late night, that's when the jokes come out. It's always good to laugh as much as we can at the situations, and the late night shows are kind of where the truth telling happens. So I find, I recommend that. Okay, I'm going to shift gears and categories, put those to the side. Okay, this category, engaging people whose beliefs we don't share. How do we interact respectfully with those who believe life begins at conception? I think, for me, personally, I think it should be fairly easy to interact respectfully with people who have a different belief about this, assuming that they're behaving respectfully to us. We can have differences of opinion about these things, and it doesn't have to be something that means we can't engage respectfully with each other. I certainly have friends who have a different belief about issues related to conception and when life begins from what I believe. So I don't find that hard. I think for me the harder question would be, when people with that point of view are behaving hatefully, how do you interact? And that's hard. My sister and my mother both spent many years escorting people going into Planned Parenthood and had to deal a lot with that. And I really respect them and anyone else who has done that sort of thing. And the best you can do is just focus on the lives who are here now, and try to share the love that you feel for that person. And if somebody's being hateful, it's just best not to engage in that kind of situation. It's not going to get you anywhere. Question: do you agree evangelicals and others are interested in what happens after death, and you are more interested in what we do while alive? I think in a general sense, I tend to agree with that. Certain fundamentalist traditions, not just Christian evangelicals, but some other fundamentalist traditions, are very, very wrapped up in what happens. Is there heaven and hell? Is there reincarnation? The fundamentalist faiths tend to really focus on reward and punishment and afterlife. And liberal interpretations of the same religions are way more focused on what we do in this life. And I find that Unitarian Universalism is one of those liberal progressive traditions that's far more focused on this life, which is one of the things I appreciate about us. Okay, another question from this category. Thoughts on engaging in political discussions with those who have opposing views? A couple years ago, I think, I read a really good book by Jonathan Haidt, H-A-I-D-T. What was the book called? Something like The Righteous Mind. And it was about why good people can disagree so strongly on different sides of these political issues. And he talked about how we think of ourselves. We like to think, if you picture like an elephant with a rider, that was the image he gave us. We like to think that our reason is the elephant and the rider, the little rider on top, are our emotions. But he says it's the other way around, that your emotions, whatever your political orientation, are the big elephant, and your reason is the little rider on top. So he recommends, first of all, knowing that that's the case and that we all get emotionally involved in important political matters. And he recommends, so there's this great tendency, especially in these times, you get fed up, you can't take it anymore, you can't understand how family members and people at work or whatever still like certain figures and so on and so forth. And it's tempting to just disengage, to basically cut them off or not deal with them if you can. But he recommends thinking of the elephant, the emotional ties that you have, family, friends, coworkers, and just focus on the emotions and the connections that you have. And let those connections, the history, the shared history, the things you do have in common, I'm sure you do, sort of snuggle up to each other. And the riders may or may not ever engage directly about the issues. So he just recommends staying connected with people with whom you disagree. And stay connected where you can. And let that be the most important task. I think that's fairly good advice. Because you know, when you debate with people on these things, rarely do you change their mind. And you're certainly not going to change their mind if they feel like you hate them. Okay, some questions on my personal experience. Question, how did you get to be such a good listener? Aw. Well, that's so sweet. You know what? I actually think I have an answer, though. To the extent that I'm a good listener. And I think this is also the same reason why sometimes people wonder why I'm comfortable speaking in public, but I seem shy, I guess. I come across as shy or something in social interactions. And I don't know that I really am truly shy, but I think I grew up with a mother and 2 of 3 siblings who just really, and so I just got used to listening, you know, and you can only sneak a word in every now and then, so you gotta, you know, take it all in and then make the word count when you blip it in. So I think that was my training. Question, what is something about your service in the Navy that informs your life/spirit? So I was active duty in the Navy for 4 years, and before that I was in ROTC for 4 years. So 8 really formative years of my life, I was doing the Navy thing. And it's interesting because I don't think about it consciously all that often, and it's hard for me to put my finger on exactly how it informs my life. All I can say really is that it's a part of me in this deep way that I kind of can't imagine myself without it. So it's hard for me to know exactly, other than I do always line up my belt buckle with the seam of my pants because that was part of inspection. So that's the most specific answer I can give. But otherwise, I think it's just, yeah, I don't know. I can stand a long time. I can But yeah, I mean, I think it was a time in my life where I probably did the most tasks that were contrary to what would be my choice or my nature. And so it kind of, I talk about, my wife Emily will tell you, I talk about going into Navy mode. And what that really means is time to just suck it up and do the thing. And so that was a life skill I guess I learned from the Navy. So I still go into Navy mode. One more personal question. What did you do before you became a minister? Well, for 10 years before I became a minister, before I became a parish minister, for a couple years I was a healthcare chaplain. Before that, I spent the better part of a decade doing nonprofit work, like program director, executive director. Before that, I was 4 years in the Navy. So that's the quick answer to what I did. All right, switching categories. Okay, questions grouped as FCU specific. What is your best advice for adults who are still seeking to learn our truths without an RE program? Best advice for adults who are still seeking to learn our truths without an RE program. That's a good question. I keep thinking there's all these great lifespan RE type things I want to do, adult religious education. And this kind of puts another bee in my bonnet to get around to doing something official. There are certain adult RE opportunities like building your own theology or things that sort of teach you a little bit more about UU values and theology. And so that's one way. I do think if you come to Sunday services pretty regularly, you kind of deduce a lot of it over time. But I do think adult enrichment opportunities would be a good addition. Question. Is that a communist moon and star on the quilt behind the podium? So I think maybe you're thinking of that sickle and star kind of thing. No, that is the crescent moon and star of Islam, Muslim tradition. But I wouldn't mind a sickle up there. It would be kind of fun. Get people talking. Oh, gosh. Question is 2-year vision for FCU. Wow. That's a good one. Well, one thing we want to do this year, the executive team, is we want to start thinking about being a 21st century congregation. I mean, we're already a quarter of the way into it practically, right? So, but what does that mean? How can we really think about how to best serve the community and the world with what we seem to be moving into with global climate change, with all the different situations we might face? So I guess the short answer would be in the next couple of years, the executive team is hoping to engage the congregation in really thinking with some vision about how we might best be in the world to come. Actually, keep us busy for a couple of years. Questions grouped as, let's see, is this right? Yeah. Spiritualmiasma. Okay. Why is 42 the answer to the universe? Because it was in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I can't remember. That's what the machine spit out as the answer and decided that really we hadn't formulated the right question. So it's your fault, the questioners. Question, what is your relationship with the goddess or understanding of the goddess? That's a good question. I really grew up, as I've told you before, as an atheist, so I didn't grow up with much of a God image, and what I had was a very kind of male image that I sort of rejected. But then as I came back into a new kind of theology and panentheism, it wasn't very embodied as male or female. So the truth probably is I haven't done a whole lot with the goddess, sadly, and I should really do more. When I see artistic depictions of the goddess or Kuan Yin, other important feminine, female spiritual teachers, I find them moving. So I should really actually dive into that. That would be a good thing. Question, where do we go when we die? I don't know. I do think my own belief, so I'm a modern universalist in a sense. So the universalists from which we get the name Unitarian Universalist, they were liberal Protestants who believed in universal salvation. They didn't believe that a loving God would condemn anyone to hell. So I believe in a modern sense of universalism. I personally don't believe in hell. I don't know if there's some sort of heaven or if there's reincarnation. I'm sort of agnostic about the afterlife. But what I do believe is that we all go to the same place. I personally don't believe that we get rewarded or punished in an afterlife for what we do in this life. I personally don't believe that. I think we all go to the same place, and all life does. That's what I believe, human or not. One more question from this category. Is belief in God a matter of semantics? Why, how? Well, I actually kind of answered that in a sermon a couple of weeks ago. But yes, I kind of do think it's a question of semantics personally, because what is God? I think it was for Forrest Church, the old UU minister Forrest Church, who said, tell me about the God you don't believe in him. The God you don't believe in, and I probably don't believe in it either. So if you want to define God in this very anthropomorphic way, then yeah, I probably don't intellectually agree with you. But you can define God in ways that are pretty hard to disagree with, like, is God the universe? Is God the great mystery? Is God your ultimate concern, as Paul Tillich said? In which case it kind of comes down to semantics. What do you mean when you say God? Okay, let's switch categories. We're getting close to the end of our time. This category is summer/moot questions, so I'm done with those. Okay, these questions are specific to UU or organized religion. All right, let's see what we got here. If you project 25 years into the future, how do you imagine Unitarian Universalism will evolve? Good question. I think, one thing I would probably predict is that it will become more multicultural. The culture is going to be less Eurocentric just by demographics. And so I kind of have trouble imagining that we will survive 25 years into the future if we don't become a little more multicultural. So that's one answer I would give. Other than that, I would say probably, I'm wondering if the worship spaces will change any. I think, some of the older buildings haven't been well cared for, and as this one has been, but some haven't been. And so as they get replaced and the new spaces are probably more free-form, that will probably inform some things too. I imagine it will be a little more embodied than it is. We tend to come from the Puritan, frozen, chosen kind of ways of being, and I imagine as we get more multicultural, some of that will shift. After Plymouth Colony merged with Mass Bay Colony, did the whole colony become Puritan? Plymouth Colony merged with Mass Bay Colony. Is this a stump the chump question? I don't know for sure. I'm kind of tempted to say, yeah. I mean, the Plymouth Colony, what I do know is that those were the Pilgrims, slightly different from the Puritans. They tended to be less well-educated, and they were anti-Church of England, whereas the Puritans tended to be more moneyed, more educated, and not against the Church of England. They just wanted a different form of worship. So somehow, some way, the Puritans kind of overtook the Pilgrims, but it might have just been the de facto way in which the Unitarians sort of overtook the Universalists, because those with more education and money and power tend to win out in the end. But does somebody know the answer to this? They were just testing me, because I don't know officially. This midshipman does not know, but we'll find out. That's how the Navy influenced me. Okay. I think, I'm really going over time. I'll try to throw in one more quick question. Let's see, what's a quick one? Okay, here's one. What's the difference between Unitarian and Universalist? Somebody joked that the Universalists thought God was too good to damn anyone, and the Unitarians thought they were too good to be damned. So the Unitarians rejected the doctrine of the Trinity. They believed that Jesus was a human. That's sort of their distinctive feature. And the Universalists, like I said, believed in universal salvation. The practical things were that the Unitarians tended to be the city mice. The Universalists were kind of more the country mice. So the Unitarians tended to be in the big cities and on the coast. The Universalists tended to be inland, have a little less money, a little less formal education. The Universalists had more of a revivalist spirit at one point in their history. The Unitarians are more that Puritan, staid kind of thing. At one point, the Universalist Church was quite large. It was one of the bigger Protestant churches in the country, believe it or not, at one point, whereas the Unitarians have always been on the small side. But the fascinating thing is that over time, each tradition got smaller and smaller, and by the time they merged in 1961, they had a lot in common, which is kind of an amazing progression, how they got to that similar place. So that's a story for another day. But thank you for your questions, and I will see what I can do with the ones I didn't get to, maybe answer them on a blog or something like that. But thank you, your questions are always better than my answers. That is my disclaimer. So let's sing our closing hymn.